Alaska Airlines has teamed up with Hawaiian Airlines to create new nonstop international flights. Go to alaskaair.com or hawaiianairlines.com, and I'll tell you more details later in the show. I'm Rachel Belle, and this is Your Last Meal, the show where celebrities share stories about the foods they love most, and we dig into the history, culture, or science of those meals with experts from around the world. Today on the program, stand-up comedian, director, producer, and dad, W. Kamau Bell. Kamau hosted 7 seasons of the Emmy-winning CNN docuseries United Shades of America. He won a Peabody Award for his Showtime docuseries, We Need to Talk About Cosby. He co-authored the New York Times bestselling book, Do the Work, an anti-racist activity book. And his new stand-up tour kicks off tomorrow in Boston. It's called Who's With Me? And today, we are going to talk a lot about macaroni and cheese. You wore a t-shirt on TV once that said, not all mac and cheese is created equal. Can you explain the message behind that shirt?
I saw that shirt and I just got it immediately. All black people get it if you grew up in America, but a lot of people aren't black are like, I don't understand. But I love wearing it because it's just a subtly political statement that people don't even realize. And it's also about insider black conversation, which I love having things that are about that.
Kamau will explain what makes his shirt statement political, and 2 fantastic guests will set the record straight about the history of macaroni and cheese in the United States. James Beard Award-winning food historian Michael W. Twitty and Gail Jessup White, a descendant of both Thomas Jefferson and some of the enslaved community who worked in his Monticello kitchen. All that coming up later in the show. But first, my conversation with W. Kamau Bell. Your first ever trip to Africa was to Kenya, and this trip was
my only ever trip to Africa.
It's your only trip still, okay. And you got to go with Anthony Bourdain for an episode of Parts Unknown, which is incredible. Can you talk about how this came about?
Yeah, so, when I got to CNN in 2016, he had already been there for a couple years, and that was when CNN had, guts and integrity. And they hired Anthony Bourdain and Morgan Spurlock and Lisa Ling and Mike Rowe, weirdly, was a part of that. But Bourdain made the biggest splash because he was also the most unlike CNN. In the wake of his shows and all those shows being successful, they're like, can we build one from the ground up? And I became that test case. And really, the only one that was successful until Stanley Tucci, but I don't really even count him because he was already super famous. I was not a famous person at that point. And I got the coveted spot of following. Bourdain was my lead-in, which is, it meant like if you were watching Bourdain, then I came on, maybe you'd stick around for me. And so, and people did. And the first year of my show was nominated for an Emmy, which was super surprising. I'd never even thought about that before. And so I was at the Emmys with my wife. We didn't win, which was no surprise. And so Bourdain won a bunch of Emmys that night because he won a bunch of Emmys every time. And so I saw him from across the room, and I was like, I just got to go meet that guy because I'd been a fan of his since he'd been on the Travel Channel. I walked over with my wife. I was like, I just got to say hello. And I really sort of went over as a fan, not as a guy who worked with him at CNN, because we don't really work together. He's not watching my show. He's not.
Maybe.
He's the most interesting man in the world, or he was. And so I walked over, and as soon as I got close to him, he was talking to somebody. He looked up, and his eyes got bright, and he said to his girlfriend, "Oh, look at this guy. This is the new star." And he was sort of talking about me, and was just super complimentary from the top, and very quickly was like, "We got to do something together someday." And I was like, yeah, okay. So he said, sure. And then 2 years later, maybe, we were doing a cover shoot for I think it was for the Hollywood Reporter. And so we were hanging out a lot, and he was like, we got to do something together. He said it again. And our boss, Amy Entelis, who's one of the greatest people in the history of TV news and showbiz, basically was there and was like, okay, let's do this. She basically made it happen. And he was like, where do you want to go? Because I started naming places in America. And Amy goes, well, he goes everywhere. And I go, people tell me I should go to Kenya because my name Kamau is Kenyan. And he goes, I've never been to Kenya. And I was like, how is it this dude's never been to Kenya? Like, it's not, like, of all the places he's been, how did he skip Kenya? Like, it's not an obscure country, and it's a country that has a lot of, like, international renown. So in, like, that 2-minute conversation, we decided to go to Kenya, and then it took months of planning, and then we finally went. And again, me and him hadn't hung out other than this Hollywood Reporter shoot. And so when I got to Kenya, I was like, first morning there, I went downstairs to eat breakfast, and I saw him sitting at a table by himself, and I saw his producers all sitting at a table by themselves. So I was like, okay, he wants to chill by himself. I'll go say hello, and then I'll go find a place to sit down. He's like, sit down. And we sat, and from that point forward, we just like talked about politics and our kids and the state of the world and stand-up comedy. He was a big fan of stand-up comedy. And we would drive to the set every day together. And like basically for 11 days, I got to hang out with the most interesting man in the world, both on camera and off camera, which was the best parts, hanging out with him at the hotel at the end of the shoot. And then at the end of the shoot, he's like, here's my number. Let's stay in touch. And if you're in New York, hit me up. And I was in New York a couple times after that, maybe at least once. And I was like, I'm not going to. And then he sadly passed away. The message from that has always been like, just reach out to people. You don't know what's going to happen to any of us. So just reach out to people. So I really tried to take that with me. Like people say, you were friends with him. And I was like, no, we were friendly. Maybe we were on our way to friends. But there's so many people in the wake of his loss that really felt it deeply, who worked with him closely and were friends. I don't want to look like I'm trying to put myself in a higher position. Mm-hmm. I just was lucky enough that like, the way I put it, it's like I was the guy on the couch who got to go on the trip with him. And I felt like, so in some ways I was like representing the fans of Bourdain more than even a coworker.
Yeah, I read that you approached it that way when you were on the show, that you weren't trying to be Mr. Cool Guy, that you were like, I'm a fan and I'm here and I'm very happy to be here with you. Yeah,
no. And so there's this scene that I'm 100% I know would not have aired if he hadn't passed away, just because of the way TV works, where we're sitting on the side of like a hill watching like the wildlife go by on the savannah, and we're drinking gin and tonics that this guy that our guide had made for us. And we'd already filmed everything we needed. We'd already had the big conversation, but we're still mic'd. And I was like, okay, I got to tell this guy, because I decided I'm going to tell this guy how important he has been to my life and career, and just be very clear about it. I don't want to miss that moment, because I had lost people before in my life. So I was like, I just want to make sure he knows, whether it's on camera or off camera. It just happened to be we had mics on, and I told him. And that's when he said that line about feeling like the luckiest man in the world. And they kept a lot of that in there. And in that moment, I was like really happy that we'd had this intimate moment. And then later to see, after he passed away, to see it on TV, it just sort of like was magnified 100-fold, just of like, I'm so glad. I wish I'd reached out to him, but I'm actually glad I took that moment to tell him how important he was. And that we had like this bond of like two guys who both ended up with TV shows on CNN, not knowing why or how. And so, and he gave me some advice, and I've really kept so it was like, it was 11 amazing days that, as I always say, I would have paid to be there, but luckily I got paid to be there.
Tell me about what you ate in Kenya.
They set me up. It's funny because so some of the producers from the show, Michael Steed, Helen Cho, Morgan Fallon, they all started working on United Shades the next season after he passed away. They had watched my show enough to know that Kamau's not an adventurous eater. And so they kept telling me we're going to have goat head stew. And I saw in my mind, I was like, well, it's goat head stew. But I'm picturing like a stew in a bowl with a soup spoon. And you just sort of put a couple spoonfuls in and just sort of swallow it. And the goat head stew, as was presented to me, was just a goat's head that had been stewed for a long time. And then somebody rips off all the things everything you can rip off of the skull that is rip-offable.
The face.
The face, the tendons, the ears, the nose, the whatever. It just all gets ripped off and thrown into a pile on top of the table. And everybody sort of eats with their hands, which the hands part is fine with me. But like you sort of reach into this pile of goat detritus, and just sort of like, not knowing what it is because it's all been ripped apart by somebody. And you just sort of chew until you've chewed as long as you can chew. And the funny thing is that at the time, I didn't realize that they had set me up on purpose. And I thought I was keeping it cool. But then if you watch the show, you can see my eyes get big and you can see me like really chewing for a while. And then later they're like, yeah, we set you up. We knew what we were doing. And then later they did it again with the cow's blood.
Okay, maybe this goes without saying, but just a heads up that the next minute and 40 seconds are a little graphic. So if you don't want to hear about the consumption of blood, feel free to skip this part. We'll see you back here in a minute and 40 seconds.
We got to hang out with the Maasai, which was incredible. And they said for days, like, yeah, we're going to drink the cow blood. And so I had like several days to get ready for this. And then you're there and they don't kill the cow because they still want the cow and they still need the cow. So they just sort of basically bleed the cow for a little bit and put it into a gourd and you take a swig. but you don't see this on TV. They had problem getting to hit the right part of the cow's jugular, so they had to keep going in 2 or 3 times.
Oh, God. Everyone who's had blood drawn knows what this is like.
Yeah. So I'm sitting there like, wait, can we please hurry up and let me drink the blood? And finally they got it, and they fill up the gourd, and like one of the Maasai drinks it, and they hand it to Bourdain, and Bourdain just smiles and hands it to me like, and I, and it's sort of like, and I just sort of I was like, I have to take a real swig. It is what it is. And I'm not allowed to throw up. Like I just told myself, you have to keep it down. You can't be the guy who comes to Africa and the white guy keeps it down and the black guy doesn't keep it down, even though Tony's stomach is definitely tougher than mine. And so I took a sip, and people asked me how it tastes. I was like, it tasted like iron and milk because it's just thick and creamy, but also like metal. And I swallowed it, and I just sort of sat there and just sort of,
I love it.
You can see the blood on my teeth.
Oh, God.
And I smile and sort of,
And that was more of a ritual, right? Than like a nourishing beverage.
No. I mean, there is nourishment in there, but the way, as I understood it, it is more of a bonding ritual.
This August will mark 9 years of making your last meal, and I am continuously surprised by how few people have picked macaroni and cheese because it is kind of the ultimate comfort food for so many people. Off the top of my head, I think there have been 3 people who have picked macaroni and cheese. Greta Gerwig, who wants the mac and cheese her best friend makes, librarian Nancy Pearl, I think she likes a Joy of Cooking recipe, and Paul Janeway, singer in the band St. Paul and the Broken Bones. He wants to eat an entire box of Kraft mac and cheese. To be clear, Kamau Bell doesn't want macaroni and cheese for his last meal, but we're going to talk a whole bunch about it after the break. Hello, world travelers. I know you're always thinking about your next trip. And starting May 12th, Alaska is offering daily nonstop flights between Seattle and Tokyo. And starting October, nonstop service between Seattle and Seoul. Lay down and sleep for the entire trip with seats that lay flat and enjoy free Starlink high-speed internet in the premium cabin. And everyone can enjoy more than 800 movies, TV episodes, and podcasts for free, including Your Last Meal and my TV show, The Nosh. Book your trip at alaskaair.com or hawaiianairlines.com. They're partners now. You wore a t-shirt on TV once that said, "Not all mac and cheese is created equal." Can you explain the message behind that shirt?
That's funny. So first of all, that shirt is made by a company called Mahogany Mommies. I feel like I have to promote them. I'm not a sponsor. I just like their shirts. They make a lot of political messaging shirts, and that one is a political message to me. The one I've been wearing recently has the words on it says, immigrants aren't criminals, but the president is. So they have a wide range of shirts.
Totally.
Messages. So amongst black people especially, you can go to like potlucks and people will be like, they're like, who's making the mac and cheese is one of those things. Like, who's making the potato salad? Because it sounds like it may be one dish, but it can be, depending on how people make it, it can be many different dishes and taste very differently. So for example, I didn't grow up with boxed mac and cheese. I didn't grow up with Kraft macaroni and cheese. And so the first time I had it, I was like, it's weird that this is even called mac and cheese because it is just, it's elbow macaroni with like a thin cheese sauce, cheese flavored sauce. It's not even
just orange,
yeah,
orange macaroni.
Yeah. So to me, it was like, that shows you that like, if that's mac and cheese and then a thing that like your grandmother makes that is like, has 3 different cheeses in it and is burnt on the top a little bit, which makes it better. And is like a meal unto itself, really. Like it's really like just like it's a side dish that could be the main dish. And everybody uses different cheeses. So even if we both use 3 different cheeses, but we use 3 different cheeses, and you use the mini macaroni, I use the big macaroni, and also you don't put any salt in it. I use a lot of salt. Like, there's just so many ways. Oh, your secret ingredient is paprika. My secret ingredient is garlic. So there's just so many different ways it can go right or wrong. You don't know to broil the top, so it's crunchy on the top. You just so it looks so it's too soft all the way through, because a lot of mac and cheese is about texture. So I saw that shirt and I just got it immediately, and I was like, oh, that's so true. And I love it because it's a conversation starter, because there are many people, and I would say all black people get it if you grew up in America, but a lot of people aren't black are like, I don't understand. And sometimes I'm like, it's fine, you don't have to understand. But I love wearing it because it's a subtly political statement that people don't even realize, and it's also about insider black conversation, which I love having things that are about that.
Yeah, explain to the white person in the white audience what is political about it.
That black people aren't all the same, as the phrase used to be until it sort of got played out. Black people aren't a monolith. So like.
Right.
You may be like, black people love mac and cheese. And we're like, yeah, but we don't all love the same type of mac and cheese.
Yeah,
It just sort of is another way to say that black people are not all the same, that we have we get painted with a broad brush in this country, and the brush is way too broad. It doesn't have enough fine detail in it. So to me, this is just it's a fun way to enter into a political conversation about blackness in this country.
Mm-hmm. The history of macaroni and cheese in America is political, and it starts with a black enslaved man named James Hemings, who was Thomas Jefferson's head chef at Monticello, his home and plantation in Charlottesville, Virginia. Here to help me tell the story of James Hemings is Gail Jessup White.
I'm a descendant of Monticello's enslaved community. I am related to James Hemings through my 3 times great-grandfather, Peter Hemings. They were brothers. This would make James Hemings my 4 times great-uncle. I'm also descended from Thomas Jefferson and his wife through one of their great-great-grandsons. I am employed at Monticello as the Public Relations and Community Engagement Officer, a title that is so long that I had to think about it. I was the first descendant of the enslaved and the enslaver to work at Monticello and be paid for it.
I have to say, just hearing you say that, my eyes instantly filled with tears. I mean, that's really, really important. For those who don't know, can you explain who James Hemings is?
So, Rachel, this is what I like to say. I am not a professional historian. I'm a family historian. Mm-hmm. And as that, it's my job to preserve family stories. So in all families, you have fact, you have myth, and you have legend. So here's some facts. James Hemings was an enslaved man brought to Jefferson's household by his wife. James Hemings was also the half-brother of Jefferson's wife, if you can get all that. James Hemings was the brother of Sally Hemings, who in time would become Jefferson's concubine. So this would make James Hemings Jefferson's de facto brother-in-law. But in an era in the United States of America where human beings could own other human beings, Jefferson owned his de facto brother-in-law.
In the 1780s, when Thomas Jefferson was appointed minister to France, he took 19-year-old James Hemings with him.
So that James could learn the art of French cookery. He becomes Jefferson's chef de cuisine, head chef at Jefferson's home, which served as an embassy. And he stays there for 5 years. And he learns the language. These are facts. He was a skilled, trained French chef, the first American French trained chef. So he would have served royalty. I mean, anyone who was important in France, in Paris, in Europe, if they come from the States, would have been served by James Hemings. That's a fact. Now, there were other famous chefs. George Washington had a famous chef. His name was Hercules. He was quite flamboyant, very famous, very skilled, but not trained in Europe as James was. One other fact. James Hemings and Thomas Jefferson would have been introduced to what was called macaroni pie, which was cheese and macaroni coming out of Italy. They would have been introduced to that while they were in Paris. Here's the myth, and this is a big myth. Thomas Jefferson invented macaroni and cheese. I assure you, Thomas Jefferson did not invent macaroni and cheese. He did not come to the kitchen to cook. He did not instruct people on how to cook. That was not his job. He was a statesman and an inventor and a slaveholder. Mm-hmm. He was not a cook. Nor did James Hemings invent macaroni and cheese. That is also a myth, right? So neither one of those individuals is responsible for inventing this dish that has become so popular in the United States of America.
But Thomas Jefferson loved the dish. So James Hemings did bring macaroni pie back to the United States and served it to the elite at Monticello. It's been said that Hemings is also responsible for bringing French fries, macaron, and the kind of hard scoop ice cream we know today to America. Unfortunately, James Hemings' name and his contributions to American food and cooking were completely erased. It took more than 200 years for Hemings to become a part of the narrative because enslaved people weren't given credit for anything they did, and nothing was written down. So researchers had to dig deep into oral history.
We as Americans have to commit ourselves to honesty and truth and to recognition that we have all contributed to this country's success. All of our ancestors have. And that's why these discussions are really important. For the Black community, a lot of it is surrounding food. And it's surrounding food because that's where our ancestors were forced to serve. So we can't talk until recent history about our legacy in politics because we weren't allowed in politics, or our legacy in industry because we weren't allowed in industry. But we were allowed in the kitchen. We were allowed in the kitchen. And that needs to be celebrated because that history is paramount and just as important as any other aspect of American history. If you can't eat, you can't live. If you can't live, you can't vote.
As for the history of macaroni and cheese, it's been traced back to the ancient Romans. Records show people were combining pasta and cheese as far back as 160 BCE. I like to imagine these Romans in their togas and tunics, curled up in front of a gladiator game, eating their cheesy pasta right out of the pot. Ancient Romans, they're just like us. Okay, so let's talk about the macaroni pie that James Hemings learned to make in Paris. If you haven't already, you should watch the excellent Netflix documentary, High on the Hog. There is a scene with Dr. Lenny Sorensen making that original recipe with Gail in the Monticello kitchen that Hemings cooked in. Obviously, this recipe starts with macaroni, which was handmade back then, and not necessarily the elbow macaroni shape that we know today, but some kind of short tube. The pasta was boiled in half milk and half water until it was very soft and infused with the dairy. Then it was layered in a tall, round casserole dish with lots of butter, lots of Parmesan cheese, and baked in the oven. Layer of pasta, layer of butter, layer of cheese, repeat.
The South is not really well known for its cheeses.
That's James Beard Award-winning author and culinary historian Michael W. Twitty.
In the South, the best you could usually do is what was called, farmer's cheese. Southerners took to sort of importing Vermont or sharp cheddars, and Jefferson also imports wheels of Parmesan. Parmesan's a big part of this story. Lots of Parmesan, lots of other common Italian and soft French cheeses, And then when it comes to the United States, the Parmesan is really, present in the earlier recipes, but as time goes on and we're more reliant on what is from here, that's when it turns into the dish we know today. Also, if I may mention, there's a little bit of kitchen pepper, and it is a mixture of what we might consider sweet spice like nutmeg or mace or allspice or cinnamon or ginger or whatever, with black pepper and white pepper to make a kind of like all seasonal condiment. We can count on that being there. And it eventually evolves into our black love affair with paprika and other spices and other goodies.
Jefferson loved Parmesan, and there are records that show that he imported it continuously, even receiving a bunch of cheese in the mail weeks before his death in 1826. So that is the old school recipe. But I want to talk about Michael's mother's macaroni and cheese. This recipe is incredible. It has every dairy known to man in it. There's butter, there's cream cheese, there's milk, there's evaporated milk, there's sour cream, there's 3 kinds of cheese. I mean, I really need to make this.
It is something I only make twice a year. And I will tell you the secret ingredient that I did leave out the book. If you can guess it, 1,000 points.
Is it another dairy?
Oh, yeah. It's a semi-dairy. It's a semi-dairy.
Let me think for a second. Okay, cottage cheese?
No, it's a semi-dairy. Processed food here. We're not talking about anything.
Velveeta?
Nice. You're damn right. A little chunk of it. My mother said, don't you ever ever, ever, ever use too much of it. Just use it to bring it together.
I mean, it has that melting quality that makes everything so smooth.
Mm-hmm.
What does macaroni and cheese mean to you?
It's something that I take very seriously. I'll be very honest with you. I did not enjoy the grown folks macaroni and cheese until much later in life, which is to say, craft had a hold on me.
Same.
And then one day I sort of like learning how to cook it, learning how to flavor it. That's when I was a teenager. And then I started to really like it, enjoy it, and love making it. And now I have this recipe that connects me to my mother, who's been gone 11 years. And it's something I make for our younger cousins and teach them how to make. And it was one of many, many things in my family that we've been able to hold on to and pass on. It makes me feel very blessed to understand not only where I come from, but what that means for generations going forward.
I was curious about Gail's mac and cheese recipe.
I only learned to cook about 10 years ago. Having said that, I've prepared macaroni and cheese outside of that from a box about maybe 5 times, and it's been excellent. Excellent. And the recipe I use can actually be found on the National Archives website, believe it or not, at archive.gov. And it is very simple. It involves 3 cheeses. I use Romano, mozzarella, and there's one other that I use that's really, really, really nice. Parmesan. Lots of butter, lots of milk, and a little flour.
So what is the history of the recipe that you make that it's on the National Archive?
Oh, Rachel, I wish I could give you some deep generational answer to that, but it's just a recipe I pulled off the internet. That's probably what they did at the archives too. Pull something off foodnetwork.com is really good. But you know what the archives should use, particularly since we're coming on the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, the one they should be using is James Heming's recipe. That's the one that needs to be on the National Archives.
Yes. The recipe that you use is unusual, I think, in that it has Parmesan and Romano, and then you have mozzarella, which is mild, but the other 2 cheeses are pretty sharp. There's a lot of different cheeses that get used, but there's usually like cheddar or something in it. Yours sounds a little bit closer to the original James Heming's that came from France when it was Parmesan and sharp cheeses being used. Was that intentional?
So, it's funny you should ask me that, because I am a true believer that the ancestors direct us, they guide us. And I have been feeling them and recognizing this for decades now. So, you know what? You might have hit upon something. Perhaps the ancestors directed me to that. James Hemings and Peter Hemings directed me to that recipe, because it's interesting that I'm not using the one that my mother used every Thanksgiving, which was principally cheddar milk, butter.
That is interesting that you're not
Yeah,
making your mother's. No matter which cheese you use, Gail says one ingredient is always present.
So macaroni and cheese has been within the Black community a labor of love. And every cook, every chef puts their own twist in it. It takes a lot of time. There's something different in every recipe. But the main thing is that there's love in every dish that's served to a family of mac and cheese. And that is the ultimate legacy of the Hemings family and of mac and cheese, that it's a labor of love.
Let's get back to W. Kamau Bell and see how he makes his mac and cheese. You have your own recipe. Your kids call it Dada's mac and cheese.
Dada's mac and cheese, yep.
What is your recipe?
So let me be clear. I do not invent recipes. I go to the internet and Google easiest way to make X. So like last night I have a hamburger recipe, and I just Googled easy hamburger recipe, and I look for the one with the least ingredients that has the least sort of like nuance to it, and make that.
No bells, no whistles.
Yeah, just because it's like I also got to get it done quickly, and I'm getting better at my kitchen skills, and I cook a lot in our house, but I have my go-to meals. And so the mac and cheese recipe is literally a recipe that I Googled that is like easy mac and cheese. I know it has Gruyere in it. It has Gruyere. It's got medium sharp cheddar, not sharp cheddar. And then it's got, what else does it have? I'm going to Google it right now. And every time, it's funny, I should save it, but I just always Google it. Like I just always, because I know what it looks like. Maybe that way I keep the recipe safe. This morning I made easy French toast. I just saw the easy French toast recipe. just because it's like, you got a lot to do. Easy mac and cheese recipe. Let's see if I can have.
And then once all the easies come up when you Google, how do you pick which easy one? Do you pick the top one?
No, you go through them all because some of them say easy, but they're not actually as easy as they say. Like, then they start with 2 days before you want to eat. Okay, that's not easy. So easy is, you find that easy can mean a lot of different things. So, and some are just involve too many steps. So this one is the one I found it. It's the Chunky Chef is what the name of the recipe is.
I always laugh at these, the blogs are so dumb, the names of them, and you have to tell people. It's like when you go out to sushi and you have to order I'll have the bad boy roll.
Yeah. I'll have the rootin' tootin' fresh and fruitin'.
Yeah.
Creamy homemade baked mac and cheese. So let's see what it's got. The hardest part is you do have to make a roux, and so you have to watch it. So medium cheddar, Gruyere, so it's 2 cheeses, and smoked paprika. That's the secret ingredient. And that's not regular paprika. I had to buy smoked paprika. The rest was pretty easy. And it also uses milk and half and half, which is also different.
Yeah.
But it's real easy to cook. Once you put it together, it takes 15 minutes to cook. And you got to do 2 things if you really want Dada's mac and cheese. After you cook it and before you broil it, you put buttered breadcrumbs, mix them with some butter, and you sprinkle that on the top, and then you broil it because you want a crusty crust on the top, and the breadcrumbs help make it crusty and crunchy. I don't know that that's in that recipe. I think I just figured that out at some point because I wanted it crustier, and I bought breadcrumbs for my easy hamburger recipe. I think that would work, and it seemed to work. So I do a couple of adjustments, but all of my kitchen hacks are because I learned to Google easy version of this recipe.
But yeah, you're not the Chunky Chef. You're Dada.
Yeah, I'm Dada.
Yeah. I have been working on this episode for over a week. I have been listening to these cuts over and over and over, listening to Gail's velvety voice say things like
mac and cheese.
And I have not eaten a single bite of macaroni and cheese. My mouth is actually watering just saying the words. I desperately need a bowl. But before I clean out my local grocery store's entire dairy case, you need to hear about Kamau's last meal. That is coming up after the break. Hi, food lovers. Season 2 of my TV show, The Nosh, is out now. And I know I'm biased because I co-produced it, I hosted it, I wrote it, but it is a really fun season. We get into everything from an Ethiopian coffee ceremony in Seattle's Pike Place Market. I get to do some fancy wilderness cooking with a TikTok influencer. Don't watch the pizza episode unless you have pizza in front of your face. You will regret it. And this is PBS, so it is shot beautifully. They're just these tasty little 8.5-minute bites, so I think everybody has time to watch. You can watch The Nosh anytime at CascadePBS.org, on the Cascade PBS app, or if you're in Washington or Canada, it's on Cascade PBS Channel 9, Thursday nights at 8:50 p.m. Pacific. Like many children of divorced parents, Kamau grew up in 2 households, with his mom in Indianapolis, Boston, and Chicago, and with his dad in Mobile, Alabama. Can you talk about your 2 food lives that you grew up with?
My mom will admittedly say she's not a cook. My mom was born during an era where basically if you were a black girl born in America, domestic work was going to be one of your main professions, and she did not want to do that. One of her first jobs as a kid was being a domestic worker for a rich white family, and she hated it so much she rebelled against all domestic tasks. So while I remember her food being fine and good, I would say good because I was a kid, looking back when I go, yeah, we used to have beanie weenie night and hamburgers and beanie weenie night and spaghetti and jar sauce. I mean, I guess, and so I don't know, maybe she made the spaghetti. No, she made the spaghetti sauce. But anyway, so it was just very basic. She had 4 or 5 meals she could make. After I got older, I would cook for myself. And so I ate a lot of homemade hamburgers and frozen pizzas. But again, I'm not complaining. My mom was a full-time worker and had a kid. So the fact that I ate every day, mission accomplished.
Kamau's mom is Janet Cheatham Bell, and she has an impressive resume. She started out as a librarian, she taught and did research at universities, and eventually started her own publishing company, where she published many of her own books, like Famous Black Quotations and the very long-titled Not All Poor People Are Black and Other Things We Need to Think More About. It sounds like it was a conscious choice. It was a bit of a political message in a way.
Yeah, she could frame it that way, but also, you're busy.
Yeah.
And I think she definitely didn't want me to, she wanted me to eat healthily. I mean, Beanie Weenies in the 70s was considered healthy food. We weren't eating fast food every night. So she definitely wanted me to eat home cooked meals. But I think she was also just like, she'd come home from work and it was about what is the thing I can do the quickest, especially when I was a little kid, that will feed this child. And what are the things he likes? She didn't want to fight with me. Although there were eggplant sometimes. I'm probably soft selling her too much. She made an eggplant dish and I hated eggplant. So she had things she could make, but she was not going to be like, she was not going to do well on a chop challenge. Like, I'm going to go in the kitchen and whip something up. She was not a whip something up person. And then in my dad's, it's like Mobile, Alabama is the southernmost tip of the South. It's on the water on the Gulf of Mexico, which I still call the Gulf of Mexico.
Please do.
And so it's a lot of seafood. It's a lot like you can literally go into the Gulf and just pull shrimp right out of it. I don't know if they still allow people to do that, but we used to do that when I was a kid. Fishing for shrimp is you put down a net, you go to sleep, and then you pull up the net and you have shrimp and crab.
Amazing.
So there's a lot of seafood, a lot of catfish, a lot of fried, and then a lot of spicy. Hot sauce is really a thing down there that I learned down there. I didn't really learn that in the North, although now hot sauce is sort of everywhere. But like, I'm the guy who, if I go to a place and ask for hot sauce and they hand me Tabasco, I'm like, oh, no.
Same.
No.
Same.
Now that I've come to California, I'm more of a Cholula guy. But yeah, and then just a lot of like what you would call soul food or Southern cooking. So, gumbo. I mean, gumbo's a thing. Mobile gumbo is different than New Orleans gumbo, which is different than other gumbos around the country. So around the South. So like Mobile gumbo, you have to sort of fight with it. Like it have crab in it, but it'll have the crab shell. So you can't just take a spoonful and eat it because you might end up biting into an animal. Like in the North, I would eat cream of wheat and put sugar in it. In the South, I would eat grits, and you're not allowed to put sugar in your grits. So as much as you want to, you can put cheese in and butter, but not sugar. So definitely had different food lives between my mom's house and the South. And I want to be clear, my mom's family could cook. Like my mom's mom could cook, and but my mom just did not pick up the cooking gene, to quote the sage.
But it sounds like she prioritized the dinner table and having conversations. So like the eating and the communication was still a thing.
Yeah. We would. Yeah, we. I mean, we were very close. So, and are still very close. Both my parents are still alive, luckily.
I heard you on Michelle Norris's podcast, which was such a great interview, where you said that you considered your mom your best friend as a kid, which is just so sweet.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm definitely a mama's boy. No other way to be. And, and we're still super close. She just texted me her Wordle, so I need to do my Wordle and text it back to her. And it's great to see now her developing relationships with my 3 daughters independent of me. So that's quite a gift.
One other thing that you talked about with Michelle was this food that your grandma made that you loved. Can you talk about the fried pies that you grew up with?
Yeah, so I know they sort of exist across cultures. We just called them fried pies, but they're also called hand pies, I found out. Basically, it's an empanada if you're in the south of the border. Like a fried dough that is filled with, I think she would do apples or peaches. A handheld apple pie is how I would basically describe it. Or if you made a Hostess apple pie from scratch.
Okay, or like the McDonald's apple pie.
Yeah, it's like a McDonald's apple pie from scratch. So, and so she used to make those. And then when she passed away, as I talked to Michelle, like the recipe just disappeared with her. And then my mom tried to make them one time, and we sort of laugh about how my mom's she may be able to pull off cooking, but she's not a baker. Because as we have learned through many food television shows, baking is a science, savory cooking is an art. So and so she is not a scientist at all. So in baking. So yeah, the way my grandmother made it, I don't know anybody who makes it the way she made it. So it's, every now and again I think about trying to recreate it, but I have not done that yet because I got 3 kids and they don't have time for me to figure that out.
Yeah. On that note, since this recipe that you love so much is lost, have you made any efforts to preserve some of the recipes from your family for your kids? Yeah.
So like I'm a big, for the holidays, I'll make a sweet potato pie, especially for Thanksgiving, because that's a thing I grew up with. And as I moved out to California and was around my wife's family, who's all white, they have pumpkin pies. And so I had to be like, I can't eat your pumpkin pie. So I would make a sweet potato pie basically for myself, and my wife would have a slice. And slowly over time, they would try it, and they've been very nice. But at this point, I really make it for me and my mom and my wife has a slice, and my kids will have a slice of pumpkin and sweet potato. I think that's one of the habits of being a mixed kid. Although to my great displeasure, they much prefer pumpkin pie. But you can't do everything as a parent.
Big question of the show, Kamau, what would you eat for your last meal?
That's funny. I thought about this, and it's not that this is the first time I've ever thought of it. I mean, everybody has this sort of version of it. It also depends on what sort of food season I'm in, like what I'm sort of really. So if there'd be a while, I would have said ramen because I was really. I go hard in the paint when I want one thing. I think I would order a full dim sum.
Yes.
I want to be able to like go, I want this, and I want the menu where you click off the things. Because I want a lot of different things. I don't just want one type of dumpling. And I also want some of that pork and probably a little bit of Peking duck, but I want a full dim sum. I want all the things.
So you mentioned checking it off. Does that mean that you prefer a menu to the carts? Because I just love the.
Oh no, I mean the carts. I'm saying the carts.
Oh, okay.
Okay. But
there's they check it off for you.
Yeah, they check it off, and then the carts come by, and then eventually you can just say I want that, and then they check it off. But yes, I definitely want to. Yeah, my last meal is going to take a couple hours.
Yes, I'm from the Bay Area, and that's one of the things I miss the most. Is my family. I mean, the place is still there that we went to on Clement Street in San Francisco.
Oh yeah.
And it's not a rolling carts place. It's actually like a walk-up counter. And I just remember that we would get a meal for the four of us, and then we'd have enough leftovers for a whole other meal, and it would be $17.
Yep.
And it's still there.
It is probably not $17 anymore,
No,
but
it shouldn't be.
But no, it shouldn't be. No, but it's definitely still worth it. I bet you that much. So
totally.
Yeah. One of the great pleasures of my life was that one time I was in New York and I went to dim sum with Ali Wong. Actually, early in her career, so she was not the Ali Wong. But she was always going to be Ali Wong, no question. But I just remember because she could actually order in her mother tongue.
Yeah.
And so when you're with somebody who can order in their mother tongue, it's always going to be better.
Do you have?
I think Shang Wang was there too. Yeah.
Do you have a place that you would want to have this last meal, a favorite dim sum spot?
It's so funny because I find like I don't want to start any fights, but I find like if they are legit dim sum spots, they're all good. Like they're all like,
totally.
As long as you're not going to like one at the mall, they're all going to be good in their own way.
Is there a particular like one or two things, the dumplings that are your favorites? Like you always have to have
I don't know how I went so long in my life without finding out about soup dumplings.
Oh, but gosh, Xiao Long Bao, so good.
Yeah, like probably 5 years ago was I first had them. And I'm sure they didn't just invent them, but like maybe they thought maybe they were too far out for our American tongues. But yeah, like I'm a big soup dumpling fan. Like I'll order a whole order that is for the table and eat them myself.
I think we have Din Tai Fung to thank for it. They're the ones who kind of introduced a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that's where I had them the first time. And then, I feel like sometimes Chinese people are like, oh, you guys gonna eat that? Okay, we'll start making that. Like, like we didn't know you were gonna eat that. Like,
Yeah.
We didn't know. Oh, you're gonna eat congee? Okay, we'll start putting congee in. So like, yeah. It's a little bit like they invented the model that McDonald's is based on. Oh, you guys want salads now? We'll make salads. Yeah. Oh, you want fish? We'll make you fish. Okay. Yeah. So I think that's the soup dumplings. I'm a big dumpling fan. Like if it's a dumpling, I'm down. I remember the first time I had pot stickers as a kid. I was at somebody's birthday party who was a Chinese American, and they're like, "We're having pot stickers." And this one's like, "It doesn't sound what doesn't sound like a thing you'd want to eat. Doesn't sound delicious." The first time I was like, "Oh, this is one of the greatest things that humanity's ever come up with." So I'm a big dumpling fan.
I think eating at friends' houses as a kid is such a huge deal in development for so many reasons. Like I remember I'm Jewish and how uncomfortable I felt when a family started praying at the table. I didn't know people did that. I never did it before. Should I do it? What do I do? Like, and you just learn so much about kind of the world from eating at people's houses. Like, what do you do if you don't like something?
My best friend, Jason, who's still my best friend, I went to dinner at his house when we were in high school. One of the first times I went to dinner's house, and they have all this food on the table, and you're sort of looking like, what can I eat here? What looks okay? And I see this giant bowl of chicken, and I sort of scoop out a bunch of chicken and put it on my plate. And that was the first time I ever tasted tofu. Because it looked like giant chunks of white chicken and sauce. And I was like, and I just heard Jason go, "Jason, I thought it was chicken. What is this?"
It's so soft.
Yeah. I was like, and that was the first time I ever had the first, not the last, but there hasn't been that many times since. But
did you like it?
No, I didn't like it at all.
Yeah,
I did. It was too unexpected. It probably, if somebody had said this is tofu and it tastes like this, maybe I could have handled it. But it was such a shock because I was like, my brain was like, it's chicken. Why is it so soft?
What happened?
Why does it taste like nothing?
Yeah,
That
the
was my.
surprise. I remember in college, like waking up and taking a swig out of a water bottle at someone's house and it was vodka. And it's just like,
Oh
yeah,
yeah. That'll scar you. That'll scar you.
And that was W. Kamau Bell's last meal. Kamau heads out on his stand-up comedy tour tomorrow. You can find a link in the show notes or go to wkamaubell.com. He spells his bell differently than mine. His is B-E-L-L. Thanks to Michael W. Twitty. His latest book is called Kosher Soul, and he won a James Beard Award for his first book, The Cooking Gene. Thanks to Gail Jessup White. Her book is called Reclamation. Sally Hemings, Thomas Jefferson, and a descendant's search for her family's lasting legacy. You're just such a wonderful person, and anyone who's been at one of your lectures is so lucky because the way that you tell a story, I mean, it's hard to take my eyes off you and what's going to happen next. You're such an amazing storyteller.
Thank you. That's so encouraging, Rachel. That means a lot coming from someone like you. I really appreciate that. You know, you've got a great personality, by the way. I have really enjoyed this, and I was trying to loosen up a little bit to mirror you because you've got all this energy.
See, I was feeling that about you. I was like, she's so warm. And yeah.
Oh. Well, next time I'm in Seattle, I'm going to find you.
Yes. Your Last Meal is a product of Seattle's Cascade PBS. Go to cascadepbs.org to become a member and get on-demand access to all PBS programming, including lots and lots of food shows. Today, we are airing the final episode of season 2 of my TV show, The Nosh. I get to go out into the woods with one of my favorite social media influencers to cook a fancy meal. And you know I love cooking a fancy meal in the woods. You can watch any episode of The Nosh anytime at cascadepbs.org. This episode was produced and edited with Maliha Syed and Sarah Bernard. Sarah also did the mixing and mastering. Original theme music by Prom Queen. Oh, and if you're in Seattle, May 31st, get tickets to the live Your Last Meal taping at the Cascade PBS Ideas Festival. This is the first time I'm interviewing a politician on the podcast. I interviewed many politicians when I was a news reporter, but never about food. My special guest is Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. Find a link to tickets in the show notes. I'm Rachel Belle, and this is Your Last Meal.
Rachel, can you hear me?
Yes. It's like,
Great.
Rachel, can you hear me? Yes.
How old is your cat and what's your cat's name?
She's 12 and her name is Poppy. But that's the thing
so
with cats
cute.
too. Like she hasn't had any Botox and she looks amazing. Young, gorgeous,
Well, you're
smooth.
talking to a cat lover. So we had our cat for 17 years. So I get that kind of unconditional love.
Yeah.
That cat was my second child.
What was your cat's name?
His name was Damn Cat.
Damn cat. That damn cat.
Damn Cat, because when he was a kid and he got lost in the house and I was so upset, I was just totally absorbed in that cat. And one of my girlfriends called and she says, well, have you found the damn cat?
You're like, no, but he has a name now if he
has
ever
a name now.
is found.
So he went by DC, which is also my hometown. So pretty much his name was Damn Cat.
Well, that's the thing too. If you're an actual pet lover, you never call your animal by their God-given name. You have like a million nicknames.
That's right. That's true.
Yeah.
Oy vey.
That's my new Oy vey sweatshirt. I'm becoming an old Jewish lady more and more every day.
Good for you.